It's National Championship Monday, which kind of got me thinking, what are some keys? What are some things that need to happen next season for the Ducks to make a run at their first ever national championship in 2025? Hey, speaking of five, there are a pair of big-name five-stars in the class of 2026 that are booking their visits to Eugene. This is TSOW. Welcome to That Show Out West for That Team Out West, an unbiased, neutral observer's view of Oregon Ducks football. I'm Ted LaRue, and when we've talked Oregon Ducks football over the past few years, off the field, on the recruiting trail, it seems like year after year after year, Dan Lanning continues to top himself recruiting class after recruiting class after recruiting class. It seems like every early signing day we're talking about Dan Lanning won the day. And out of all of these masterpieces that he has put together in acquiring this high school talent, this 2026 class, that might be the crown jewel of what he's been able to do so far in his recruiting career. It is the number one class currently in the country. 10 commits so far in the class of 26. Half of them, 5, are top 100 kids. And you know there's going to be more, and there's going to be more, and there's going to be more that are coming in. And there are a handful. There are 2 specifically. Is 2 a handful? Well, I'll let you decide certainly on that. But there are 2 intriguing, high-profile visits coming to Eugene, Oregon. Let's start in chronological order. Let's start at the upcoming Junior Day on campus in Eugene. There's a lot of big-name players. There's a lot of top 100 players that are going to be on campus. Maybe the most high-profile of them will be a current Ohio State commit in Chris Henry Jr., the number 1 wide receiver in the class of 2026. And this is not his first visit to Eugene. He has clearly made a connection with the coaches, although he remains steadfast in his commitment to Ohio State. Chris has been committed to the Buckeyes since July 28th, 2023. Yet he still finds himself on campus in Eugene. Chris visited Oregon for the Maryland game back in November, also Saturday Night Live in July. 6'5", 185 pounds. Look, he ran a 4.65 40-yard dash last year at the Under Armour Ohio camp. So he's not going to be that Decorian Moore speed guy, burner guy, right, that's going to have that ultra track speed. But when I watch his tape from some of these camps, when I watch his tape from his high school tape certainly as well, you throw it in the general vicinity, Chris Henry Jr. is going to come down with the football. He's like a vacuum up there. Anything near him, he just sucks it in. To the left, to the right, high, he'll find a way. So go up and get it kind of guy that Chris Henry Jr. is. But he can do so much more than that as well. How insane would it be if they could land Decorian Moore, who was a flip, by the way, Decorian Moore and Chris Henry Jr. in back-to-back classes? And how apropos would it be of the changing landscape maybe within recruiting that Chris Henry Jr. would flip from Ohio State over to Oregon if this indeed happened? Maybe that's a little bit of a long shot right now, but hear me out for just a minute. Couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe actually a little bit more recent, certainly than that, it was, hey, if you're a top wide receiver, you go to Ohio State. A couple of years back, the class with Brandon Innes and Carnell Tate, like they had 3 out of the top 5 wide receivers in the country that went to Ohio State. Of course, you saw Jeremiah Smith go to Ohio State, but maybe if obviously they already got Decorian Moore, and then if they follow it up by getting Chris to come to Oregon, maybe that's starting to flip the wide receiver position just a little bit, especially if we see Decorian go on the field and have a really good year. These Oregon-Ohio State recruiting battles, they're not going anywhere, folks. This is going to be Ryan Day versus Dan Lanning, not only on the field, but on the recruiting trail is going to be something we're going to be seeing for a very, very long time as well. And here's another thing to keep in mind when it comes to Chris and his recruitment over the next few months, and, well, not just few months, but, going all the way up to December at early signing day. This is a Matter Day kid. Oregon, I talked about their 10 commitments in this class. 2 of their commitments are also Matter Day kids, and there is absolutely no doubt. When you talk about a pipeline, the major pipeline from Santa Ana, California, Mater Dei High School, the Monarchs, where is that pipeline going? It's going to Eugene, Oregon. Dan Lanning has done a tremendous job creating a relationship, obviously, with those coaches down there. This is a Trinity League school. They play in maybe the best high school league in America. And this is a great school to have a pipeline with. You look at offensive tackle Cody Green, Tomahini Topoi. I hope I pronounced that right. But those are also Mater Dei kids that are already committed to Oregon. So will there be some other recruitment kind of going on there as they look at their high school seasons next year and they're all playing with each other? That remains to be seen. Let's head over and talk about the quarterback position. 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis has locked in a visit to Eugene for June 6th through June 8th. Last week, he trimmed down to his final 6 schools. Alongside Oregon was Georgia, South Carolina, Auburn, Alabama, and Ohio State. He was originally committed to Georgia for 6 months. He's got another visit coming to Georgia June 13th and 15th. South Carolina, I've kind of been watching some interviews with some recruiting experts as it pertains to this Jared Curtis recruitment. South Carolina, where he's visiting June 20th through the 22nd, putting a lot of resources into recruiting Jared certainly right now. You look at this class for 2026, Oregon already has a commitment in 4-star Jonas Williams. Stop me if you've heard that before. A recruitment that maybe goes all the way down to the wire when Oregon already has a 4-star recruit. That's exactly what happened this last year when they got Jaron Kavawe-Sagapulatele to flip on signing day. He's no longer with the team, obviously, but they had Achilles Smith Jr. Kind of forever in there. But you look at Jared Curtis, he's got all the tools, man. You look at his frame, 6'4", 225 pounds. He is that prototypical pocket passer frame, but he's also got a little bit of mobility. I watch his film. He plays in the Nashville area, led his team to a Tennessee State championship this past season, and he dances around a little bit. I feel like there's some throws and how he uses his legs and his mobility where he feels like, I'm so much better than these kids playing against these high schoolers that I can maybe do things that I can get away with where I maybe wouldn't be able to do in the SEC. I wouldn't be able to do those kinds of things in the Big Ten, but he has got a rocket launcher attached to his shoulder. An ultra strong arm, can make all the throws, certainly on the field. And when you look at the quarterback position for the Oregon Ducks going forward, this is an interesting timing because unless Dante Moore comes out next season and he has something like 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns or wins the Heisman Trophy or something absolutely crazy like that, I think Dante Moore is a 2-year guy at Oregon, to be honest with you. So this would kind of be a pretty good fit for Jared in a post-Dante Moore era where he could kind of sit and learn for 1 year and then he could play his second year on campus with the Ducks. We'll see if all of this happens. I've got a feeling both of these recruitments are going to be hot. They are going to be heavy until the 11th hour, 11 months from now. That's building for the future down the road. What about the near future in the here and now? What about Oregon for 2025? Of course, we're going to watch the last college football game tonight when Ohio State takes on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and these are 2 very experienced football teams. And I want to talk about the experience factor first when I talk about some keys about a possible Oregon championship run in 2025. I want to make this known right away. I think that this 2025 team right now for Oregon, I think they can be really good. I think they can maybe even be great. Can they be a national championship team? I think there's a lot that needs to be figured out. There's a lot that needs to be figured out through spring ball. There's a lot that needs to be figured out through fall camp. There's young guys in some spots where there were maybe experienced players on this team in those same spots in 2024. Let's talk about experience. This is a younger team. I think there's going to be players that are young guys, maybe underclassmen, that are going to be expected to step up into bigger roles. So the guys that have experience on this Oregon football team, this whole team is going to look to lean on those type of guys. I'm talking about the ultra experienced players. I'm talking about Bryce Betcher on defense. How about Noah Whittington on the offensive side of the football as well? You look at the last 2 years, you want to look at national championship teams. Now, these two examples were very old and very experienced teams that ran it back. 2023 Michigan and 2024 Ohio State. I do not think that the Oregon Ducks will be as experienced as the Maize and Blue and the Scarlet and Gray from those respective seasons. But it's up to these experienced players to kind of set the tone, I think, for the younger players, and for those younger players to lean on the experience, but you also have to learn from these experiences as well. And it's not just the players, it's the coaches. When I look at this Oregon Ducks football team, they have been learning at an elite level. When you look at other programs across college football, specifically from the head coach spot, you are learning when you're going 6-6. You're learning when you're going 7-5. You're learning when you're coaching at Toledo. You're learning when you're coaching at Wyoming, right? That's when you're learning. But Dan Lanning is learning when he's going 13-0 and winning a Big Ten championship in his first year in said conference. They need to take these experiences from the last 2 seasons. The 2 losses to Washington and, of course, the loss to Ohio State. And use those past experiences and build them into your purpose for 2025. Hang it on the walls of the locker room. Hang it on the walls of the weight room. Use that as your motivation, as your purpose. It starts with those players, and then it also continues to the coaches as this thing kind of goes along. Michigan and Ohio State had their purposes. Michigan lost to TCU. They lost to Georgia in the college football playoff. They wanted to come back to take it one step further. You look at what Ohio State was able to do, not being able to beat Michigan. They wanted to take it another step further and be able to win a national championship. They have the opportunity to do so tonight. Oregon, you saw what they were able to do in year 1, going undefeated in Big Ten play, but coming up short. They want to use it as their purpose. They want to learn from those experiences to take it one step further. Experience, an ultra big key, and leaning on it is going to be an ultra big key for the 2025 Ducks to get the most out of their team. I think one other big key is 2 players that don't have a ton of experience. Dante Moore and DeCorian Moore. I think a key for Oregon to get the most out of their football team next season is getting the most out of these 2 guys. Here's what I want to say, and this really encapsulates maybe my feeling about the 2025 team. I think the ceiling of both of these guys is going to be achieved in 2026. Doesn't mean the ceiling can't be achieved in 2025, but I mean, look, DeCorian Moore was playing high school football in Duncanville, Texas this last year. DeCorian Moore was sitting on the bench behind Dylan Gabriel this past year. Like, these are 2 first-time starters, assuming that DeCorian Moore slots into that role to start things off. So, but you want as high as you can get towards that ceiling in 2025, and you're going to need to get as high as you can to that ceiling because these 2 players have as a high of ceiling as anybody on this Oregon Ducks roster. Let's start first with Dante at the quarterback position. Since Dan Lanning has stepped on foot here in Oregon, and when he's put all 10 toes down in Eugene, there has been an elite quarterback standard. Bo Nix, Heisman finalist. Dillon Gabriel, Heisman finalist. Dante Moore, not saying that he has to be a Heisman finalist, although Tez Johnson thinks that he can certainly get to that point. He has to continue the standard at Oregon. Like, for them to be able to make a run towards a championship, even like a Big Ten championship, even like a college football playoff, you can't see a lot of these types of mistakes that you saw with Dante Moore at UCLA. There's a big potential, I think, for Dante to be really, really good. I think he's got the highest ceiling of any quarterback of the Dan Lanning era. Yes, that includes Bo Nix, who's doing great things with the Denver Broncos right now. Yes, that includes Dillon Gabriel, who just won a Big Ten title last season. When you see, like, you look back at Dante's UCLA film, there are some people out there that can nitpick and pick apart parts of his film, and you can derive two different narratives. You can pick out the parts of his film where he's making really good throws in some of those early games for UCLA, and you can pick that out and say, yeah, Dante Moore, he's going to live up to those Tez Johnson expectations. And then other people can also pick apart his film and kind of look at the growing pains during his freshman season and says, what are you guys so excited about with Dante Moore? So there's a little bit of an unknown with him right now. But here's one thing to keep in mind with Dante. This is going to be his third year in college. And being able to sit and learn behind Will Stein and Dillon Gabriel in this offense is going to be great. And I've just got a feeling that you plug a quarterback into a system with Evan Stewart, with DeCorian Moore, with Kenyon Sadiq, with the running game that they're going to have, and he's probably going to have success just based on what is around him. I think Dante's going to have a lot of success next season because of a true freshman, because of DeCorian Moore. I think he's a big part to Dante Moore putting up some big-time numbers next season. So let's talk about DeCorian. Did you see that catch in the Polynesian Bowl? Like, when I look at DeCorian Moore, it seems like he's playing football against children. I saw him on that punt return in the Under Armour game. I saw him in this Polynesian Bowl, and it's just like, this dude needs an upgrade to the level of play that he's playing with. When I look at the Oregon wide receiver room next season, and I talked about this in a previous edition of TSOW, there's going to be a lot of guys clustered together that are fighting for that spot, but I'm going to be honest with you. I think DeCorian Moore and Evan Stewart are going to be two solidified guys in this passing game. I think for next season, what do we need to see out of DeCorian Moore? You don't have to be the leading receiver, although he could mess around and be the leading receiver next season. I think Evan Stewart is going to be that number one target, obviously, but for DeCorian, you need to be the ultimate playmaker. You need to be that guy that they turn to when we need a big play, whether it's on a jet sweep, whether it's on a screen, whether it's just on a go ball, whatever it needs. He needs to be that ultimate playmaker, kind of a lot like Jeremiah Smith was this last season for Ohio State. I know those two are compared so many times. Their skill sets, their frames, their body types, it's like apples and oranges, right? It's hard to compare. But I think you need to have a very similar impact on the game, just maybe not the type of impact and how exactly Jeremiah Smith is being used. I think DeCorian Moore is going to be used in a little bit of a different way. Get the ball in his hands. He's going to make plays. When they need an explosive play to be made, I think next season they might be turning to DeCorian Moore. We all know to be successful in major college football, it all starts in the trenches. I think the reason that Oregon has been able to have the success the last 2 years is because they've been able to be really good in the trenches, especially this season. I want to first talk about the offensive line, because the offensive line and the defensive line need to stay great with new faces in new places. Like, you look at both of these groups, the offensive line is going to lose 4 starters. The defensive line is slated to lose 3 starters. Let's talk about this offensive line first. Johnny Cornelius, Josh Connerly is gone. Nishad Struthers gone. Marcus Harper is also gone on this offensive line. I'm looking at these transfer tackles. I'm looking at Alex Harkey. I'm looking at Isaiah World. I'm looking at a couple of guys that look really good on tape, that have certainly put up some good production, but have played at the Group of 5 level. A big reason why Oregon has had so much success with Bo Nix, so much success with Dylan Gabriel is because this has been the best pass protection unit in all of college football. Once they got it figured out at the Oregon State game this year, nobody really got pressure until that Rose Bowl, of course, on the quarterbacks. And when you have as good a quarterbacks as these guys have been the last handful of seasons, and when you have some of the weapons that Oregon has downfield, it all starts up front. And if that front gives them time to be able to execute the offense and throw the football down the field, that's where Oregon has success as one of the top offenses in college football. And that's where the questions really come into play. I feel pretty confident about the interior of the offensive line. I've talked about that before. Iapani Lalaolu, Pancho, I think is going to be a really good center. Emmanuel Pregnon, Matthew Bedford, Dave Iuli. I think there's a really good interior there. But what about the tackles? I think there's reasons to be optimistic that these guys are going to come in and do a good job, but it's not a guarantee. And I think for this team to be able to make a run towards a natty in 2025, they need to be able to continue the standard. We talk about the standard continuing at the quarterback position. They need to continue the standard in terms of pass protection as well. And then you look at the defensive side. Jordan Birch gone. Jamari Caldwell is gone. Derek Harmon is gone. There's some questions up front on this defensive line. But there is also, once again, a lot of potential, and there is some reasons for optimism as well. I think Mateo Uiagalelei, who is one of the top disruptors in the Big Ten this last season, I think there's a chance that he could take it to another level. And I think for them to make a national championship run, he needs to be that elite level pass rusher that we all know that he can be. You look at Amari Washington coming in on the defensive line. Bear Alexander could maybe be at that Derek Harmon spot, possibly, if Amari Washington fills on the nose in the middle of that defensive line, certainly as well. So if Mateo really gets going, then maybe a lot of the attention and a lot of the focus is going to go in his direction. And now that allows someone like a Tatum Tuioti on the other side to also have a really big season coming off the edge. And what about younger guys? What about like the Blake Purchases of the world? What about the Elijah Rushings of the world as well? You rotate other guys at that other edge spot. When you have Mateo doing what he could do next season, that could really make everything flow together really, really well from a defensive line spot. But there is no question that the offensive line and the defensive line, in order for them to continue this trajectory and keep stepping up and make a run towards a championship, the guys that are filling these roles on the offensive and defensive line, they need to be able to step up and they need to be able to continue to maintain the standard of Oregon football in the trenches. I want to finish off in the secondary. The secondary needs to be strong, and they need to be strong in key moments. We talked about the motivation and we talked about the purpose these last 2 years for the Ducks when their national championship hopes have flown out the window. The Washington game, the Pac-12 championship game, they could not cover the Huskies in that particular matchup. You look at the passing game and what Chip Kelly was able to scheme up down the field with Ohio State. This secondary needs to be good at the end of the year. This secondary needs to be playing their best when it matters. Late in November, into December, into January. They need to hit their peak at the right time. And here's kind of how this fits into this current era of college football. And this is, I'm looking at the secondary specifically here, but I think this also goes for some other positions as well. I think you need to let the young talent, because we know the young talent is going to be expected to step up and play a role, especially in the secondary. They've recruited extremely well in the secondary. There's a lot of talented guys with high ceilings in the defensive backfield. I think early in this season, even if it means taking a loss late in September to Penn State, you need to let this young talent work out the growing pains early. So when you get to those November games, when you get to those playoff games in December, you don't get beat over the top and you don't get torched like you have been the last 2 seasons, and it doesn't cost you a shot to get to maybe a national championship game or to be able to hoist the trophy when all is said and done as well. I think a big part for this secondary to be playing their best at the end of the year, it comes down to these two all Big Ten transfers, Theron and Thieneman, Theron Johnson and Dylan Thieneman. These all Big Ten transfers need to play big time. When you look at the defensive backfield, when you look at these 5 spots right now, and say, hey, we're only got one guy coming back. Kobe Savage is coming back at safety. Boy, there's a lot to replace. But then when you look at, okay, you got Savage back there. You got Dylan Thieneman, who's put in 2 really good years over there at Purdue as an all-conference player. You look at Theron Johnson over there at corner, who solidified a veteran presence, who started every game for Northwestern the past 2 seasons. All of a sudden, you look around and says, okay, now we got 2 more spots to fill. The smart money is an experienced Jaleel Florence, who's been out with injury. He's been in this program for a number of years. Now you got to fill that nickel spot with whoever fills that role. All of a sudden now you're looking actually decently experienced with Kobe Savage, with Dylan Thieneman, with Theron Johnson, and a lot of these other guys right now. And these are guys, these 2 guys, these transfers, these are guys that need to be able to continue to play at a high level to assist this Oregon secondary. They've been able to take steps up the ladder as far as their talent in the defensive backfield. If Oregon is going to be playing their best at the end of the season against the pass, these 2 guys are going to lead the charge, not only in their on-the-field performance, but they're going to take the charge to be able to have these young players learn from them, and to be able to have Theron and Thieneman be able to lead the way and pave the way for some of these younger guys to really play at their ceiling or above their ceiling in 2025. Those are my thoughts. I know we got a long way to go, right? It is National Championship Monday today. Will the Oregon Ducks be playing for the National Championship 1 year from now? Well, we got a lot to figure out between then and now. But those are some keys. Those are a handful of things that I feel need to happen if the Ducks really want to make a run in 2025. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below about all of these. I'm not saying these are the keys. I'm saying these are some. There's a lot of things that need to happen. I want to hear what you what you have to say on some of those keys, things that need to happen for Oregon to be able to make a run for a championship in 2025. Hey, if you want to leave some thoughts in the comments about the recruiting and the visits as well, feel free to do so. I'm Ted LaRue. This has been That Show Out West.